Hey everybody, welcome back to another YouTube video, and this is a second part to the Sega Dreamcast 20th anniversary, 20th birthday. So I was talking to my wife, and she said, you know what, why'd you only do 10 of your favorite games for 20th anniversary or birthday for the Sega Dreamcast? Why didn't you do 20 games? I thought to myself, 20 for 20, that sounds like a great idea. So I thought, well, why not? Let's take a look to see, because there were definitely several honorable mentions. Other games that I thought deserved to be in the category for consideration, or at least shout-outs. I figured getting a list of 20 games, or approximately thereof, will hopefully get them the proper, I guess, light and respect they deserve. Now, there were definitely some that I wanted to put up here. It's definitely a close call. This is not something based upon an IGN website or anywhere else. You know, this is my personal experience, games I thought. And I'll also throw in one other additional honorable mention, perhaps a 21st per se. So one that I thought was so close, making it into my top 10, barely left out, has to be Jet Grind Radio. So Jet Grind Radio in the United States, North America, or Western Hemisphere for that matter, Jet Set Radio everywhere else. So definitely a great game, so much fun, so much personality. I mean, essentially, you're tagging graffiti, competing against other graffiti gangs, groups out in the town and such. It was just so much personality. This is a game that, you know, thankfully has seen additional life on other consoles. It got, you know, ported over like on the PlayStation 3. I think the Xbox 360 even had a PlayStation Vita port. Definitely a great game. Certainly the sequel came out on the Xbox, original Xbox, as far as Sega's transition from being a console producer to becoming a third party. So definitely such a great game, such great music. I remember calling up Sega of America back in the early 2000s, and they play their music when you're on hold along with music from another game, which I'll get to shortly. And that game is none other than Space Channel 5. So, Space Channel 5, what can I say? You are a space reporter, ooh la la, and it was probably our first good taste as far as on a mainstream, as far as a rhythm game goes. Certainly Hatsune Miku's all over the place. Rhythm games have become more common. Not taking anything away from games like Dance Dance Revolution. Those are definitely a big pioneer rhythm game. But I mean, you know, certainly there were dance pads and so forth. This is a game that anyone can pick up a controller and start playing and have definitely rhythm to the music. And certainly, you know, we got to see the return of Michael Jackson in a Sega game. So he gave the blessing, and his likeness, you know, made it into the game. And its sequel, Space Channel 5 Part 2, which came out in Japan, I think maybe potentially came out in Europe. I'm not 100% sure. If you know for certain, please leave a comment just to clarify. But definitely, as far as we got to see Michael Jackson as Space Michael, which is really cool. It built upon the former in the sequel, and we got to see it come out, the sequel, as far as Space Channel 5 Part 2 in the United States. It had a PlayStation 2 release which had bundled both games together. So definitely, as far as great game, so much fun. Again, like Just Said Radio, or Jet Grind Radio, lots of personality, a great game to play. Now, same sort of idea as far as personality, great music. It stands to say that Rez. This is one of the, you know, great swan songs, late releases for the Sega Dreamcast. Now, we've seen Rez all throughout. Rez came out on the Dreamcast. We also saw it come on the PlayStation 2. We saw it get additional life. We saw it on the Xbox 360 as far as the release goes. And it came on the PlayStation 4 as far as the HD remake, available to play on the PlayStation VR. But this is the one that got it started. It's such a great game. You know, it's a shooter, it's a rhythm game, all mixed into one. It was defined as being the synesthesia, merging the senses. And certainly as far as, I mean, I remember playing this game late at night, music turned up, and just getting so immersed into the experience. It was such a great experience. So definitely, if you're looking for a similar game, something that you can play and has tons of replay value, Rez, definitely check it out. So definitely, as far as another game, this is more of a series, kind of like I showed Space Channel 5, Part 1, Part 2. As far as loads of fun, great arcade experience, great fighter. That's the Power Stone series, Power Stone 1 and 2. So definitely lots of fun. You know, best thing I compare it to between like Super Smash Brothers with a little bit of a little something different to it as far as, but very comparable. Great arcade experience. This was Sega Naomi releases released by Capcom. Capcom, as on my prior video, great supporters of the Dreamcast. We saw so many great, fantastic releases, and especially coming from the arcade, the Sega Naomi hardware, which was akin to the Dreamcast. The only difference was that there was a little bit more memory, and so that's why we were able to see so many games come out on the Dreamcast. So definitely great game. Just beat up your friends, couch co-op, fantastic experience. We did see a compilation release. Power Stone Collection came on the PSP, so if you have a PSP, certainly go ahead and check it out. If you have a PlayStation Vita, you can certainly play that. If you have a Vita TV or PlayStation TV, you can play on your big screens. So that's one other option to be able to enjoy this game. So another game, I won't say necessarily a trend center per se. We've seen other games similar as far as its presentation, but we've seen a lot more of it since the Dreamcast going further. And this is sort of the Berserk Guts Rage. So definitely as far as you get, really immersed into this game. So it's based upon the anime manga series Berserk, which was really, popular. It's still ongoing in terms of releases. We're seeing new anime for it, manga releases. But this is the first one we had seen as far as this series in the West. Great music. So Susumu Hirasawa, who did the music for the anime, also did songs for this. So definitely, and there's exclusives. They're not found on the Dreamcast version. Oh, the Dreamcast version is only found here. There aren't similar songs in the anime. There are some that are very similar. So if you like Susumu Hirasawa, if you like the music from this game and the anime, certainly just look them up, Susumu Hirasawa. But definitely great, hack and slash action. We saw Koei, Tecmo put out tons and tons of games, certainly starting with Dynasty Warriors 2, going forward on PlayStation 2. As far as the Muso-style games, we've seen other game developers put out Muso-style hack and slash games, but this is kind of the first one with a lot of story drive to it. That's one of the things is that, you play Dynasty Warriors, there's some sort of story, but it's not so well defined. You have a huge map, go slay everything, beat the generals, go on to the next stage, but this is actually driven a big story, and it actually happens between, I believe it's episode 13 or issue 13 in the manga, so there's a little snippet where actually this fits into canon. So really interesting game, great soundtrack, definitely worth checking out. There was another Berserk game that came out on the PS2, which is actually not necessarily a sequel per se, but was only released in Japan. So if you like Berserk, if you like the style of gameplay, there is a follow-up on PS2, and of course we've seen on the PS4 and in Japan on the Vita, Berserk came out. So there's more Berserk goodness. If you like it, definitely check it out. Alright, so this is, Dreamcast had a really short life, right? It came out in the United States on September 9th, 1999. Essentially lasted about 2 years. We saw a trickle at the very end. So it didn't really have a lot of time to, make a bunch of games. Certainly, game development for new hardware starts several years typically before the launch, and certainly they're building towards, the platform, building up an install base and such. So, but thankfully, despite a short period of time, we were able to get two great racers. And one of them, Metropolis Street Racer, and the other one, Sega GT. So Sega GT was essentially Sega's answer or response to Sony and the juggernaut of Gran Turismo. So certainly, if you're into that simulation racing, this was the game to get. If you were a Dreamcast owner and you want to play something with better graphics than there was available on the PlayStation 1. Now granted though, there was a compromise, certainly if you were following near the end of the Dreamcast lifespan, was Bleem. They had made 3 discs, one for Tekken 3, there was another one for Gran Turismo, and another one for Metal Gear Solid. And so it upped the graphics for Gran Turismo 2 to make it almost as good as a regular Dreamcast game. But if you wanted, certainly the, capitalization as far as Dreamcast hardware for simulation, it was Sega GT. Now switching gears, if you wanted more of an, arcade experience, something more akin to maybe Forza Horizon these days, we saw, as far as on the Dreamcast, was Metropolis Street Racer. So this was made by Bizarre Creations. We saw them later on the original Xbox making Project Gotham Racing, and then on the Xbox 360, Project Gotham Racing 3 and 4. The first two on the original Xbox, the sequels on the Xbox 360. But that was Bizarre Creations. So Project Gotham Racing, Metropolis Street Racer, essentially very comparable name because this was the foundation for that series. So if you enjoyed Project Gotham Racing and missed that series, it was a great game. It's too bad they're not making games anymore. And definitely start off with Metropolis Street Racer. Pick it up for the Dreamcast if you don't have it already. Alright, back to arcade goodness. Absolutely, as far as one game that I kind of alluded to a little bit in one of my prior videos. If you happen to watch it, it was my special pickups video from Japan, and that is Virtual On Oratorio Tangram. So on the original Sega Saturn, we saw the first Virtual On game, and so the sequel came out, and we got to play it on the Dreamcast, and it's Virtual On Oratorio Tangram. So VOOT for short. Definitely takes advantage of the Dreamcast graphics. Looks fantastic. They did release twin sticks for the Dreamcast in Japan. However, I believe it was Total Control 3 or 4 was a third-party adapter where if you had original Sega Saturn twin sticks, you could hook it up and play this game without having to do any kind of mods or customizations, cutting up cords from your Sega Saturn twin sticks. So I had picked up some twin sticks for the Sega Saturn back before this had even come out, before the Dreamcast had even launched. There was a service member station in Japan who ended up ordering it for me and sending it to me online based upon an eBay purchase. So definitely, this game makes full use of that. It's gorgeous. Definitely a very, I won't say necessarily a under-the-radar game, but there's not a lot of mech games that came out in the States. There were a few, but definitely as far as this style of gameplay, this is the only one. We saw a lot more mech games, especially starting with the PlayStation 2. We had the Armored Core series from Software. There was another game by From Software called Frame Glide, or probably Frame Glide, but some mistranslation, which came out in Japan. There is a fan translation out there, but unfortunately we didn't see it. There was one Gundam game that came out in the States, but there were several more that came out in Japan. But definitely, as far as great game, definitely worth picking up. If you don't have it, it's worth recommend checking it out. Alright, so definitely there were some great fighters I definitely enjoyed on the Dreamcast. I've definitely shown some on this video and the prior video. And the next one has to be Capcom vs. SNK. Now this game was really unique and certainly flew under the radar. So back when this game was out during the late 90s, early 2000s, SNK and Sega were actually cooperating on working together. Now there were a lot of things going on in the news near the late 90s. Sega almost merged with Bandai to form what would have been similar to like Namco Bandai, where we see all these great anime games coming out and such. However, it fell through the cracks. Could you imagine if Sega consoles was the place to go to for Gundam games or One Piece games, Dragon Ball games? I mean, definitely that future could have happened. Unfortunately, it fell through, so we didn't see a whole lot of those types of series on the Dreamcast. There were a couple, but not nearly as much as we saw on the PlayStation 2. However, going back, I digress, Capcom vs. SNK, we got to see SNK work together with Capcom and Sega. So on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, there was an SNK versus Capcom. So it was a collection of little mini games where you'd earn points. And those points, if you had a special adapter that connected from your Neo Geo Pocket Color to your Dreamcast, you can transfer those points and use them in this game to unlock different items like costumes and such. And so it was a faster way to earn points than actually playing. Even if you played really well, you'd earn more points quicker using the SNK vs. Capcom, the Neo Geo Pocket Color, than on this game. However, great game, fantastic graphics, great story. I mean, this is arcade perfection in your own home. This is the only one that we got in the US for the Dreamcast. There were others that did come out in Japan. So there was certainly, this is the Japanese version. Just compare, if you like to compare cover arts. You know, oftentimes I like the Japanese cover art more than the American cover art, but there's times when that exception does not hold. And so there was a semi-sequel. This was Capcom vs. SNK Pro. It had, I think, 1 or 2 characters, maybe a stage or 2. It is a really minor update. We saw that minor update in the arcades, if you happen to have it at an arcade near you to have that game. But the full-fledged sequel, the one that I was really hoping for near the end of the Dreamcast life cycle, was Capcom vs. SNK 2. Bigger game, you know, more characters to play with. Unfortunately, it didn't come out in the States. It did come out on the GameCube, came out on the Xbox, on the PS2, digital versions like on the PS3. However, the Dreamcast version was one that just got stuck in Japan. This was one that I I had pre-ordered very early on because I knew it was a game that I wanted to make sure that I could play in my own home, and it's just pure gorgeous. All right, last but not least, without further ado, our two shooters. So I found it to be a tie just because they play somewhat similarly but different enough. And those are Unreal Tournament and Quake 3 Arena. So both were, certainly cutting edge shooters at their time, arena shooters, fighters. Some people gravitate more towards the Quake 3 style gameplay. Some were more into the Unreal Tournament. And so, but these two games, these two franchises were definitely changing the scene at the time. So definitely, as far as Unreal Tournament, it was the first iteration that we saw where it was based upon the idea of, hey, we're not a story-driven first-person shooter like Doom or Wolfenstein. We want to go out there guns blazing where you're shooting at each other. And I think this was, between the two, I like this one as far as the controls go. I thought, based upon the fact that, there's only a single stick on the Dreamcast controller, I think it optimized its use probably best of all. I think Soldier of Fortune on the Dreamcast did a great job as far as its controls, all things considered. I didn't like the controls as much on Quake 3 Arena, but I think from a graphical standpoint and what they did, it was really incredible at the time. I believe Secret Level worked on the port and really enhanced it. And additionally, you could actually play against folks online. I believe for both games, both the PC and the Dreamcast, you could interact. But Secret Level was a studio out of California that Sega worked with. I think you may have owned them, then shut them down later. But they really tailored it to really optimize it for the Dreamcast. I think there were 1 or 2 stages from the PC version that got cut out because of the size. The Dreamcast, I think, had all of 8 or 16 megabytes of RAM. So you had to do more with less. And so there were some concessions made, but I think all things considered, it was a great game to pick up. Lots of fun. So that was the tie for the last one, number 20, per se. Now, as far as the honorable mention, I'm going to put it to Echo the Dolphin. So, reason being is that I thought it was a gorgeous game. It was tough as nails, I thought. There were definitely times when it was so challenging. It was nice to see Echo back just because, the Sega Saturn, it's one of those systems to where it's easy to love and it's easy to hate. I think there were some great games on the Saturn. It's just unfortunate that we didn't see certain game series migrate over from the Sega Genesis. And definitely the Echo series was one that didn't make it over. I believe Appaloosa was the developer. We just didn't see them, and it was curious as far as what was going to happen next with the series, and thankfully it came back. Of note, there was actually a sequel in the works for the Dreamcast. I believe in the past year there were announcements made about a prototype for a sequel to the Dreamcast release, and so there was actually a playable build, I believe in alpha, that's out there lurking somewhere over the internet. Haven't tried it out, haven't downloaded it, but I thought it was a great game. I think it definitely deserved a sequel. It's too bad we didn't see it. We did see it get ported to the PlayStation 2. I'm not sure as far as how much changed when it migrated to the PS2, but I think it's a great series. Certainly, how much of a mascot Dolphin can be, it's debatable, but I think as far as when you think of Sega and nostalgia, I think Echo falls in there. And certainly this time of the year, we just saw the Sega Genesis Mini come out this past week. Certainly as far as it deserves honorable mention. So definitely thank you for stopping by for this video. I know I haven't had a pickup video or another video in some time. I've got one more video that I'll release, and we'll take a look to see what it is. And that's just to let you know, it is a pickups video. Last week was kind of a slow week, but I had to branch out from my usual spots, and I was able to find a few gems. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Thanks for stopping by. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you want notifications, click on the bell. And this is Kermit the Gaming Hermit, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by. See you later.